In the beginning, there was light, and with it, a force so powerful that it could shape worlds and bring forth both life and death. But what if I told you there was an angel, or perhaps a demon, whose name is entwined with both judgment and destruction? An angel whose very presence marks the end, yet not without purpose. This is Samael, the angel of death, a figure wrapped in mystery and fear, yet necessary in the divine order of the universe. Samael's role is not like other angels who bring comfort or salvation. No, his purpose is far heavier. Some say he is the Venom of God, a force of purification and cleansing, while others believe he is the tempter, the whisperer in the dark who leads mortals to their fall. His name, Samael, speaks of poison, of death. But what if death is not the end? What if, like a seed in the ground, it is the beginning of something new? Today, we will dive into the untold story of Samael, the angel who walks between worlds, neither wholly divine nor entirely demonic. He stands at the threshold of life and death, judging and executing the divine will. But is he a force of destruction, or a necessary instrument of God's grand design? Join me as we unravel the mystery of Samael, whose very name echoes through the halls of sacred texts and ancient wisdom, shedding light on the dark and the unknown. In the next few minutes, we'll explore the many faces of Samael, the accuser, the executioner, and the force that bridges chaos and order. Prepare to be amazed, for the journey we are about to take will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about angels, demons, and the divine. So let us begin this journey together, to understand the angel who brings both judgment and mercy in equal measure. Samael, the angel of death, has long been portrayed as a figure of darkness and fear, his very name evoking the dread of the inevitable end. Yet, in truth, Samael is not simply a harbinger of death. He is a force of judgment, of divine will, a necessary part of the universe's balance. From ancient scriptures to the whispers of mystics, Samael is a figure shrouded in mystery, one who walks between the realms of life and death, bearing the weight of God's judgment. When we speak of Samael, we often imagine a figure draped in shadows, a dark angel whose sole purpose is to deliver death. However, this is only part of the truth. Samael's role as the angel of death is not merely to bring about the cessation of life, but rather to ensure that each soul meets its appointed end in accordance with the divine plan. Death, in this sense, is not the end, but a necessary part of the cosmic order. For every life that is lived, there must be a moment of transition, a moment where one passes from this world into the next. And it is Samael who ensures that this transition is carried out with the precision of divine law. In the Bible, death is often depicted as a tool of God's judgment. In the story of Egypt, for instance, when Pharaoh refused to free the Israelites, God sent plagues upon Egypt, each one a step closer to the ultimate consequence, the death of the firstborns. It was not an act of senseless violence, but an act of divine justice, a consequence for the Pharaoh's hardened heart and refusal to obey God's will. Samael, though not directly mentioned in these events, embodies this role of judgment, acting as the divine executor of God's will, ensuring that the soul's passage is in accordance with the divine law. But why is death, something so feared and misunderstood, considered a necessary part of the divine order? To understand this, we must look beyond the fear of mortality and understand the spiritual journey that each soul undergoes. In many spiritual traditions, death is not seen as the end of existence, but as a transition. Just as the seed must fall to the ground and die in order to sprout into new life, so too must the soul undergo a form of death before it can be reborn into the next phase of existence. This is where Samael's role becomes clearer, He is not the destroyer for the sake of destruction, but the harbinger of transformation. In his embrace, death becomes a passage, a doorway to the next chapter of the soul's journey. Take, for example, the story of King Hezekiah from the Bible. In the book of Isaiah, we read that Hezekiah, a righteous king of Judah, fell ill and was on the brink of death. The prophet Isaiah came to him with a message from God. "Set your house in order, for you shall die and not live." But upon hearing this, Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to God, asking for more time. God, in his mercy, extended Hezekiah's life by another 15 years. In this moment, we see Samael's role in action, not as a figure of malevolence, but as an instrument of divine will. Hezekiah's life was extended because it was part of God's plan for him to continue his work. But when the time came for Hezekiah's life to end, Samael would be the one to ensure his transition. This brings us to a vital lesson in Samael's role. Death is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood. Samael, as the angel of death, is not the enemy of life, but the enforcer of divine order. His role is not to be seen as a force of evil, but as the one who ensures that each soul leaves this world at its appointed time. In this sense, Samael is not a destroyer of life, but a restorer of balance in the universe. Without death, there can be no life. Without an end, there can be no new beginning. Samael's role, then, is both terrifying and essential. He ensures that every soul fulfills its purpose and that the divine law is carried out to the fullest extent. There is a story from Jewish mysticism that further illustrates this point. It is said that Samael was once sent by God to collect the soul of the great prophet Elijah. As the angel of death approached, Elijah, in his wisdom, understood the nature of Samael's task and accepted his fate with grace. Elijah knew that his time had come, and Samael, though he was the bearer of death, was also the instrument of divine will. This story reminds us that Samael is not merely a figure of fear. He is a guide, a protector of the divine order, who ensures that every soul meets its ultimate destiny at the right moment. And yet, Samael's role is not limited to the physical death of the body. He is also the one who guides the soul through its journey after death. In this way, Samael's work goes beyond the physical realm and into the spiritual. He is not just the one who delivers the final blow, but the one who ensures that each soul reaches its proper place in the afterlife. This is where the true power of Samael lies. He is not just an executor of death, but a spiritual guide, one who helps the soul transition into its next phase of existence, whether that be in the heavenly realms or in the purgatorial spaces between life and the afterlife. There is a great deal of misunderstanding about Samael, particularly among those who view him solely as a force of evil. But when we look more closely at his role, we see that he is not an enemy of life, but a necessary part of the divine order. Samael is the angel who brings about the end of one chapter, so that another can begin. He is the force that ensures that each soul fulfills its purpose in this world and is given the opportunity to continue its journey in the next. In this way, Samael teaches us an important lesson about life itself, that death is not to be feared, but understood. Just as we must accept the seasons of nature, knowing that winter must come before spring, so too must we accept the inevitability of death, trusting that it is a natural part of the divine plan. Samael, in his role as the angel of death, reminds us of the importance of embracing all aspects of life, including its inevitable end. For in that end, there is the promise of a new beginning. As we move forward, we must remember that Samael's presence is not one of malice, but of divine purpose. In his shadow, we find not only the end of life, but the continuation of the soul's journey. And in his hand, we find not only judgment, but transformation. Let us now move to explore further Samael's deeper connection to the cosmic balance, and how his role goes far beyond that of a mere angel of death. In the sacred scriptures and the ancient texts, the figure of Samael emerges as one of the most intriguing and complex beings. Often associated with both life and death, Samael's role in the Bible and other mythological texts offers us profound insights into the nature of divine judgment, destruction, and the purpose behind the apparent darkness of his existence. Samael's role in the Bible is not always straightforward, and many interpretations have emerged over time about his true function within the divine order. In some traditions, Samael is simply seen as the angel of death, the one who takes life at God's command. Yet, as we delve deeper into the texts, we see that Samael's role is not merely to end life, but to fulfill a higher, divine purpose that transcends human understanding. One of the earliest references to Samael, or a figure akin to him, can be found in the Jewish mystical texts, particularly the Talmud and the Zohar. In these works, Samael is described not merely as an agent of destruction, but as a key figure in the enforcement of divine justice. While the Bible itself may not mention Samael by name, the role he plays in enforcing God's will and serving as the accuser is alluded to in several key narratives. For instance, in the book of Job, we encounter a figure known as the accuser. This figure stands before God, challenging the righteousness of humanity and accusing Job of being unworthy of God's favor. The role of the accuser is one of judgment, testing the faith and integrity of humans. In Jewish mysticism, Samael is often identified as this very accuser, the one who stands before God and speaks of the failings and sins of mankind. His presence is not one of rebellion, but of divine necessity, for without judgment there can be no growth or understanding. In the Zohar, Samael's role becomes even more intricate. Here, Samael is depicted as a dark angel, embodying the very force of death. He is not simply a servant of destruction, but a necessary instrument through which God's will is carried out. It is through Samael's hands that divine judgment is executed, bringing about both the punishment of the wicked and the cleansing of the universe from impurity. In this sense, Samael's role is both a manifestation of God's wrath and his mercy, for through Samael's destruction, a new order can be born. Death, in this context, is not the final end, but the beginning of a new life, a new phase in the divine plan. While Samael's function as the accuser and executor of divine justice is clear in Jewish mysticism, his association with Satan in Christian traditions complicates his identity. In Christian theology, Satan is often portrayed as the adversary, the one who actively rebels against God's will, seeking to overthrow divine order. However, Samael's relationship with Satan is not so simple. In fact, many early Jewish texts distinguish Samael from Satan, portraying him not as a rebel, but as an enforcer of divine law. Some traditions even suggest that Samael, in his role as the accuser, serves a purpose similar to that of Satan, but within a different framework. One of the most fascinating aspects of Samael's role in the Bible is his connection to the fall of man. The story of Adam and Eve, as told in the book of Genesis, presents the first sin in human history, the disobedience of Adam and Eve in eating the forbidden fruit. Traditionally, this act of defiance is attributed to Satan, who is often depicted as the serpent in the Garden of Eden. However, in early Jewish mysticism, there is a compelling argument that Samael, not Satan, was the true figure behind the temptation in Eden. The Zohar and other mystical texts suggest that Samael took on the form of the serpent, serving as the tempter who led Eve to disobey God. In this interpretation, Samael is not a figure of rebellion against God, but an instrument of divine law. His role in leading humanity to fall was not one of malice, but of necessity. The fall, according to these texts, was not a tragic accident, but a pivotal moment in God's plan for creation. By tempting Eve, Samael ensured that humanity would know the difference between good and evil, marking the beginning of humanity's journey toward wisdom and understanding. This interpretation raises profound questions about the nature of temptation, free will, and the purpose of suffering. If Samael's actions were part of God's plan, does that mean that the fall of man was necessary for the fulfillment of the divine purpose? Some scholars argue that this view of Samael as an agent of divine will forces us to reconsider our understanding of sin and evil. In this light, Samael becomes not a figure of ultimate evil, but a servant of divine justice, carrying out a necessary act that would lead humanity toward greater spiritual awareness. The association between Samael and Lilith also adds another layer of complexity to his character. According to Jewish folklore, Lilith was Adam's first wife, created before Eve, who refused to submit to Adam and fled the Garden of Eden. In some mystical traditions, Samael is said to have taken Lilith as his consort, and together they are believed to have given birth to demonic forces. In these accounts, Samael and Lilith represent the union of judgment and chaos, forces that both disrupt and restore the balance of the world. The offspring of their union, according to some traditions, are the spirits that continue to whisper temptations to humanity, drawing them further away from the divine. In this context, Samael's role becomes even more profound. He is not merely a destroyer, but a figure who embodies both the necessary destruction of the old and the potential for new growth. Samael's union with Lilith symbolizes the integration of opposites: judgment and chaos, death and life, destruction and creation. Through their partnership, Samael and Lilith teach us that in order for transformation to occur, there must be a blending of seemingly contradictory forces. The darkness of Samael is balanced by the chaos of Lilith, creating a force that shapes the spiritual evolution of humanity. Finally, the figure of Samael is not just a relic of ancient texts. His presence continues to be felt in modern spiritual practices. In esoteric traditions and occult practices, Samael is invoked as a symbol of raw power, judgment, and transformation. He is seen not as a force to be feared, but as one to be respected and understood. Samael's influence extends into the realm of personal growth, where he is called upon to help individuals confront their darkest fears, break through personal limitations, and embrace their shadow selves. In conclusion, Samael's presence in the Bible and other mythological texts is a powerful reminder that judgment, destruction, and death are not inherently evil, but are necessary components of the divine plan. Samael serves as both the angel of death and the enforcer of divine will, guiding souls to their appointed end and ensuring that the cosmic balance is maintained. His role as the accuser, the tempter, and the executioner challenges us to rethink our understanding of sin, free will, and the nature of divine justice. In Samael's actions, we see not just destruction, but the potential for transformation, a force that, though dark, is necessary for the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan. Samael, often referred to as the Venom of God, stands as one of the most enigmatic and misunderstood figures within religious and mythological texts. His role in the universe is shrouded in complexity, straddling the line between the divine and the destructive. The question that has haunted many for centuries is Samael merely a tool of divine justice, or is he a force of evil, acting against the will of God? To understand this, we must explore his function in the grand design of the universe, examining both his nature and the ancient texts that depict him. In many spiritual traditions, Samael is seen as an agent of divine justice, a force that executes God's will without question. He is often portrayed as the angel of death, the one who carries out the final judgment, delivering souls to their appointed destinations in the afterlife. But this role is not limited to simply bringing death. Samael also serves as a purifier, a force that cleanses the world of impurity, often through destruction and judgment. In this sense, Samael is both a necessary and terrifying part of the divine order. To understand whether Samael is a tool of God or a figure of opposition, we must first consider his role as the accuser. In the Bible, particularly in the book of Job, we encounter the figure of the accuser, one who stands before God and challenges the righteousness of humanity. While this accuser is not explicitly named as Samael in the Bible, many Jewish traditions and mystical writings identify him as such. Samael, in his role as the accuser, is not an adversary of God. Rather, he serves as an instrument of divine will, ensuring that no sin goes unpunished and that the divine order is upheld. In Jewish mysticism, especially in the Zohar and Talmud, Samael is depicted as one who challenges humanity, not out of malice, but as a necessary force of balance. His role is to point out the flaws and transgressions of mankind, reminding them of their imperfection. Samael is not the one who initiates rebellion against God, as Satan does in Christian theology, but rather the one who ensures that God's laws are upheld. He acts as an enforcer of divine judgment, making sure that the cycle of life and death follows the predetermined course set by God. However, the question arises, if Samael is indeed an instrument of divine will, why does he embody death and destruction? The answer lies in the concept of divine justice. In many theological traditions, justice is not merely about rewards for good behavior, but about consequences for wrongdoing. Samael's presence in the world is a reminder that judgment must follow sin, and destruction is sometimes necessary for the restoration of balance. Without death, without the ending of cycles, new beginnings would not be possible. Samael, in his role as the angel of death, ensures that the cosmic cycle remains intact, bringing an end to what has run its course and allowing room for new life and growth. This concept is seen clearly in the Bible, particularly in the story of the Exodus. When Pharaoh refused to release the Israelites from bondage, God sent plagues upon Egypt, culminating in the death of every firstborn son. This act, though devastating, was not born out of cruelty, but was a necessary consequence of Pharaoh's defiance. Samael, in this context, would be the one who brought about that final plague, executing divine justice. Samael's actions, though destructive, were a means of fulfilling God's ultimate plan, to free the Israelites and bring about a new era of salvation. His destruction was not an act of rebellion, but an act of divine will. But does Samael's role as an enforcer of divine law make him a purely righteous being? This is where his complexity deepens. While Samael is a tool of divine justice, his actions often blur the lines between good and evil. Samael is the one who brings death, but death is not always an evil force. In many spiritual traditions, death is seen as a necessary part of the cycle of life, a transition that must occur for spiritual growth. Samael's destruction is not evil in itself, but is a necessary part of the process of renewal and purification. This paradox of Samael's role as both an instrument of divine justice and a figure associated with destruction leads to the question, can Samael be considered a force of evil? In some interpretations, yes. Samael, with his power to end lives, is a terrifying figure. His role in the fall of Adam and Eve in particular has led some to view him as a malevolent force, one who tempts humanity into sin, leading them into suffering and death. In these interpretations, Samael represents not just death, but the corruption that leads to it. His association with Lilith, the first wife of Adam, who rebelled against the divine order, adds to this darker image of Samael. Together, Samael and Lilith are sometimes seen as embodiments of chaos, tempting humanity to break divine laws and fall from grace. However, these interpretations are not the only way to understand Samael. In other traditions, Samael is viewed as a necessary force of divine judgment, one who carries out the will of God without malice or desire for destruction. His role is not to oppose God, but to fulfill God's plan, ensuring that no soul escapes judgment and that every action has its consequence. Samael's association with death is not about causing suffering for its own sake, but about ensuring that the soul's journey is complete. Without Samael, the world would be out of balance, with no one to carry out the final judgment and no end to the cycles of life and death. This brings us to an important lesson that Samael's role teaches us. His presence in the universe is a reminder that the forces of creation and destruction are not separate but interwoven. Just as night follows day and winter follows fall, so too does death follow life. Samael teaches us that life cannot exist without death, and that destruction is sometimes necessary for creation to continue. Samael's role is not to be feared, but to be understood, as a force that ensures the cosmic balance is maintained, and that each soul fulfills its purpose. As we continue to explore Samael's place in the divine order, we must remember that he is neither purely good nor purely evil. Samael is a force of duality, embodying both the destructive power of death and the restorative power of judgment. He is a tool of God, but also a figure whose actions force us to confront the complexities of existence. In this way, Samael's role in the universe challenges us to think deeply about the nature of good and evil, justice and mercy, life and death. In the next chapter of our exploration, we will dive deeper into Samael's relationship with the forces of chaos and order, and how his presence in the cosmic balance brings both destruction and transformation. Stay with me as we continue to unravel the mystery of Samael, a figure whose role in the universe is both terrifying and essential. The union of Samael and Lilith is one of the most mysterious and fascinating aspects of both Jewish mysticism and other esoteric traditions. Together, they represent a potent combination of opposites: Samael, the enforcer of divine judgment, and Lilith, the embodiment of chaos and rebellion. Their relationship, steeped in myth and mystery, offers a deeper understanding of the dynamic between order and disorder, law and freedom, destruction and creation. In many traditions, Lilith is often portrayed as the first wife of Adam, created before Eve, but cast out of Eden for her refusal to submit to Adam's authority. Lilith's rebellion against the divine order marks her as a symbol of independence, strength, and defiance. She is the force that refuses to be bound, the untamed spirit who rebels against the natural order. In contrast, Samael, often seen as an angel of death and judgment, represents the opposite. He is a figure of structure, law, and divine justice, delivering punishment to those who transgress the boundaries of God's will. Together, Samael and Lilith embody the ultimate duality: chaos and order, destruction and creation, law and rebellion. Their union, while controversial and mysterious, is also symbolic of the tension between these opposing forces, a tension that plays a crucial role in the spiritual evolution of the world. The union of Samael and Lilith, a symbiosis of chaos and judgment. In Jewish mysticism, particularly in the Zohar, Samael and Lilith are sometimes depicted as consorts, bound together by a shared purpose, yet embodying vastly different principles. Samael, in his role as the angel of death and executioner of divine justice, brings about the destruction of evil and impurity. His job is to cleanse the world, ensuring that divine law is upheld, and that those who rebel against it face the consequences. Lilith, on the other hand, represents chaos, darkness, and defiance. She is often associated with the demonic realm and is said to give birth to legions of demons. In the context of their relationship, Lilith symbolizes the force of rebellion, the spirit that refuses to be subdued by any higher authority. Her connection with Samael brings a dark symmetry between creation and destruction. In a sense, Samael's destructive power is balanced by Lilith's chaotic force, each one playing an integral role in the cosmic order, albeit in a twisted and unconventional manner. While Samael is the force that executes judgment, Lilith is the force that challenges the very idea of order. She is not inherently evil, but rather a force that questions and disturbs the established norms. Her actions lead to a type of spiritual transformation, one that forces humanity to confront its own limitations, to face its shadow self, and to transcend the false dichotomies between good and evil. Lilith as the catalyst for Samael's destructive justice. In some traditions, Lilith is seen as the catalyst that initiates Samael's role in the world. Her defiance and refusal to submit to the divine order push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable in the celestial realm. In this sense, Lilith's rebellion is not just an act of disobedience, but a necessary challenge that forces the divine system to establish boundaries. She represents the chaos that precedes all creation, the tumultuous force that must be confronted before any form of order can emerge. Samael, in his connection to Lilith, plays a unique role in responding to this chaos. He is not merely the passive enforcer of divine law, but is actively involved in the transformation that arises from this chaos. His role is to bring judgment upon those who violate the divine order, but in doing so, he is also part of the process that turns disorder into a new, divine order. Samael does not destroy for the sake of destruction, but for purification. Through his judgment, he restores balance in the universe, turning the chaos that Lilith represents into an opportunity for spiritual growth and renewal. Together, Samael and Lilith teach us that order cannot exist without chaos, and creation cannot occur without destruction. Their relationship embodies the idea that the universe operates on the interplay of opposites. The presence of Samael, with his unwavering commitment to justice, ensures that the forces of chaos are kept in check, while Lilith's rebellion serves as the necessary counterpart, urging humanity to explore the limits of its own boundaries and to transcend the conventional. Lilith's influence, the shadow that shapes Samael's justice. The relationship between Samael and Lilith is not merely one of opposition, but a reflection of the deeper spiritual truths that shape the universe. Lilith, often seen as the mother of demons and the embodiment of chaos, serves as a necessary force in the world, one that shapes the boundaries of human experience. Her influence on Samael is subtle but profound. Samael's destruction of evil is not purely punitive, it is also transformative. Through Samael's work, the forces of chaos, embodied by Lilith, are channeled into a greater divine purpose. Lilith's influence on Samael also highlights the importance of confronting the shadow side of human nature. Lilith, in many interpretations, represents the repressed parts of ourselves, the dark, rebellious aspects of our psyche that we often refuse to acknowledge. Samael, by confronting this shadow, brings about the destruction of what is impure, allowing for a deeper, more authentic spiritual transformation. It is through Samael's judgment that the soul is purified, but only by first confronting and embracing the chaotic forces within. This relationship between Samael and Lilith offers a powerful lesson about the necessity of balance in the spiritual journey. It is not enough to only embrace light and order. We must also confront the darkness and chaos that reside within us. Samael's role is not just about destruction, but about purification and transformation. Through his connection with Lilith, Samael teaches us that true spiritual growth comes when we face the chaos within ourselves and allow it to be transformed into something divine. The dual nature of Samael and Lilith's relationship, destruction and creation. The union of Samael and Lilith reflects a deeper metaphysical truth. Destruction and creation are two sides of the same coin. Samael's role as the angel of death and judgment is inextricably linked to his connection with Lilith. Without the force of chaos represented by Lilith, Samael's role would be reduced to mere mechanical execution of divine law, lacking the transformative power that comes from confronting and embracing the darkness. Their union also teaches us that spiritual growth requires both destruction and creation. Just as a seed must die in the soil to sprout into new life, so too must the old and the impure be destroyed before the new can emerge. Samael, in his judgment, clears the path for this new creation, while Lilith's chaotic force ensures that the path is not always easy or predictable. Together, they symbolize the ever-present tension between order and chaos, light and darkness, law and rebellion, forces that must coexist in order for the universe to function properly. In conclusion, the relationship between Samael and Lilith is a profound exploration of the dynamic between chaos and order, destruction and creation. Samael, the angel of judgment, and Lilith, the embodiment of rebellion and chaos, each play an essential role in the divine plan. Their union reflects the spiritual truth that without destruction, there can be no transformation. Without chaos, there can be no creation. Samael and Lilith remind us that in order to grow spiritually, we must confront both the light and the darkness within us, and through this confrontation, we find our true path to enlightenment. As we come to the end of our journey through the life and mysteries of Samael, I hope you've gained a deeper understanding of this enigmatic figure, whose presence in the divine order challenges our perceptions of good and evil, life and death. Samael, the angel of death, the accuser and the enforcer of divine justice, has long been a subject of fascination, fear and reverence. But as we've explored, he is much more than just a harbinger of doom. He is a figure who ensures the balance of the universe, a necessary force whose actions, though often terrifying, are integral to the divine plan. Through his role as the angel of death, Samael teaches us that life cannot exist without death. In the same way that the seasons change and the cycle of nature continues, death is an essential part of the cosmic order. It is not the end, but a transition, a passage from one phase of existence to the next. Samael's presence, though often seen as dark, is in reality a force of purification, transformation, and renewal. His role in delivering judgment and destruction serves to clear the way for new growth, new beginnings, and the fulfillment of God's divine plan. Without Samael, the universe would be in chaos, unable to function as a cohesive whole. But Samael is not a figure to be feared or rejected. Rather, he is a reflection of the duality that exists within us all, the tension between light and darkness, creation and destruction, law and chaos. He embodies the necessary destruction that must occur for transformation to take place. His presence in the divine plan challenges us to confront our own shadows, to accept that destruction and death are not always signs of failure or malice, but are often necessary for new life to emerge. Samael's role as the accuser, the one who points out the flaws and sins of humanity, is not an act of cruelty, but an act of divine mercy. He ensures that no soul remains untested, no sin goes unnoticed. His judgment is not finality, but an invitation to growth, to reflection, and to spiritual evolution. In a world where we often shy away from discussing death, destruction, and judgment, Samael forces us to face these realities head-on. He is the figure who reminds us that everything in life is temporary, that all things must come to an end so that new life can begin. He is the enforcer of the divine will, the one who ensures that the cycle of life and death remains in balance. Without Samael's presence, the universe would spiral into disorder, and the divine plan would be left unfulfilled. Samael teaches us that there is no life without death, no creation without destruction. His role, though dark, is ultimately a force for good. He is the necessary destruction that clears the path for new creation, for spiritual growth, and for the fulfillment of God's plan for the universe. As we reflect on Samael's place in the cosmic order, it becomes clear that his role is far more profound than most people realize. He is not the villain in some grand cosmic story, but rather a key figure in the grand scheme of existence, whose actions, though often misunderstood, are essential for the divine balance. Samael's work, as the angel of death and the enforcer of divine judgment, is not about causing suffering, but about bringing about the necessary consequences that allow for growth, transformation, and renewal. His presence in the universe ensures that divine law is upheld and that the cycle of life and death continues to unfold as it should. So, as we conclude our exploration of Samael and his mysterious, multifaceted role in the divine plan, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the lessons he teaches us. Death is not to be feared, but understood. Destruction is not always an act of evil, but a necessary part of the process of creation. Judgment is not something to dread, but an opportunity for growth, transformation, and spiritual evolution. Samael, in his role as the angel of death, is not the enemy of life, but the guardian of divine order, ensuring that each soul receives its due and that the universe remains in balance. Now, if you found this video insightful and thought-provoking, I encourage you to like this video and share it with others who may also be interested in exploring the deeper, hidden truths of the divine order. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on future videos that dive into the mysteries of the Bible and other ancient teachings. Together, we will continue to explore these powerful, often misunderstood figures who shape the course of human history and spiritual evolution. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of Samael. If you have any thoughts or reflections on Samael's role in the divine plan, feel free to share them in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation, explore new ideas, and uncover the hidden truths that lie beneath the surface of our everyday lives. Stay tuned for more revelations, more insights, and more deep dives into the mysteries that shape our world. Until next time, remember that in the darkest corners of the universe, there is always a greater purpose at work, guiding us all toward a higher understanding of life, death, and the divine.